How's your, if you take your glasses off, because I'm getting a lot, I can't see your eyes because of the reflection. Can you still see me?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, since I had the cataracts done, my eyes are quite good.
Really?
Yeah.
What are you like, got 20/20 vision or something?
But almost, yeah. Yeah.
Why are you wearing glasses then?
Well, there's always a distance, a little bit, you know. They always say, oh, you need a new pair of glasses every year, you know.
Yeah.
I was actually born in Poole and in Dorset. And I think, because Mum wasn't married when I was born, and I think she was put out by the family, because the family home was in Portsmouth. I think she had to go. I suppose she had me, and that caused problems. And I think the church helped her out. That's why she finished up at over Wallop House. Mum's dad was in the army, and he was placed in Ireland, you know, before the Troubles. And he was in South Ireland. Mum always talked about Skerries, and that's a place down south. And she always talked about it with love, you know. I think she loved the place. She had a hard life. I mean, her husband that she married, Bill Stokes, he wasn't very good, and he didn't like me, obviously, because I wasn't his child. There was something about him, maybe because I was probably aware that he wasn't my proper father, you know. And of course, in those days, they just changed my name verbally. They never bothered to do it properly. And I went in the army with the name Stokes. And it wasn't my proper name, you know. Because on my birth certificate, where it says father, there was just a line. So I didn't have a father, according to the birth certificate. Trish's mum and dad were bombed out of Edgware, where they lived in London. Their house was bombed. And their son-in-law, who was married to Trish's sister, he was in the RAF. And he was based at Middle Wallop Aerodrome. And he found him a place in Wallop. And they lived in number 3, the Square, Nether Wallop. There was a little green outside, and the village hall was just there, yeah. We went to school on the same bus, which obviously we didn't really know then, you know. But all the local kids, we all went to Andover. She lived in the Square, obviously, and I lived in the lodge of a big house up the road. Wallop House it was called. And it was occupied by Mrs. Mallet, her original name was. But her husband was a Polish fighter pilot. He used to fly Spitfires. But now it's, I think it's a home now, the Wallop House. And the lodge is still there. Of course, in those days, everything was a bit stuffy. I wasn't allowed to go up to the big house, you know. Mum worked in the kitchen, and his stepfather was a gardener. He did all the gardens. I used to go up and I used to like cutting the lawn because he had an electric, petrol lawnmower, and he used to have there was 2 lawns, one there and one down, and they're as big as tennis courts. They're really big. So I used to go up and down. I used to love it, you know, up and down with the mower, like, you know. It saved him doing it, you know. Because it was a big house. It had big gardens. Down near this lawns, there was a summer house. And the summer houses used to go round. The idea was you could turn them to the sun or away from the sun, whatever you wanted to do. And that we used to have fun in that, whizzing round on it. When I became of age, I left school at 15. Then my mum took me up to Andover Junction to see the station master. Mr. Rose, his name was. He was a lovely man, really old school, you know. And he said to me, do you want to go on the platform or on the engines? as a fireman. I said, well, I didn't fancy all that coal dust. So I said, I'll go on the platform. They were the old Southern engines, Bullards they were called. And they were 462, I think. That's the wheel layout. 4 at the front, 6 driving wheels and 2 little trailers. So they're always known by 462. So I worked on the platform from 1950 until 18 when I had to go in the army. You had to go in, it was compulsory, like you had to go in. And funny enough, I went in the 9th of April. That was the day I had to go to Winchester. That was where the barracks was. In those days, you was always in the local regiment. They were called the Buffs. They were the Royal Hampshire Regiment. There was a chap, where we lived in Rumford Road in Broadstairs, there was a chap next door, he was in the Buffs when he was a younger man. He had a club foot and he had a special bike that he only pedalled one leg. And there's a little village called Liddon just outside of Broadstairs, and he used to go to the club there and have a drink. And he'd come home very late at night. And I was on the last one down from Victoria, got into Ramsgate about 2 o'clock in the morning. And I came home, and Ted, his name was, he was laying in the front garden. And I said, you all right, Ted? Yeah, I'm all right, boy. He said, yeah. I said, it was freezing cold, you know, it's a frosty night. I said, you better go indoors, mate, it's cold out here. So I eventually got him up, and he went indoors, and he lived with a lady. I don't know who she was in relation to him. I don't think there was any, like, married or anything like that. And she couldn't hear, you know. She was out one day, she had an electric lawnmower, and she was pushing up and down the grass, and she never had it switched on. Oh, dear. Yeah, but he's a nice chap, he was. When I went in the army, I had to go to Winchester, and that was the depot. Then you had to go where the regiment was, and the regiment was in Germany at the time, a place called Lüneburg. I think that's where the armistice was signed after the Second World War in the railway carriage, wasn't it? And yeah, we was in a German barracks there, very posh, you know. Yeah, very nice. But we only had about £1 a week, I think we were allowed. Yeah. And I used to get something in the naffy on Monday, and that was it. My wages were gone. And then we had to go to Malaya on a boat called the Dunera. Have you ever heard of the Windrush that all the West Indies come over on? Well, that was one of them. That was one of the troop ships. We were in the bow. When there was rough seas, it was going up and down like a lift, you know. Well, it was horrible. We used to go at the back, at the stern, and fire off the back. They used to allow us to try our weapons, firing them, you know, just into the sea, like, you know. I think it took about 6 weeks to go out there. You had to go across the Bay of Biscay, of course. All the Bay of Biscay is terrible. It was like a meal pond when we went across it. And we went down the east coast, and we turned in at Gibraltar into the Med. Then, of course, we got to Port Said to go down through the Suez Canal, and then across to Singapore. That's where we got off. And then we had, I think, a fortnight's train, jungle training they called it. That was the right laugh. Oh, yeah, very basic stuff, you know, yeah. When 9 times out of 10 we were on a bandit camp, you know, but 9 times out of 10 they were finished years ago, you know. The war was gone, you know, it's 53 for Christ's sake. The war ended in 45. And yet there were still Japanese blokes in the jungle that didn't even know the war had finished. And all their stuff was useless because they didn't have any oil for their weapons or anything. If they'd fired them, they'd have probably blown up, you know. Because they was after the rubber, you see, the rubber trees were all in Malaya. and the communists wanted them, you know. That's why we had the conflict after the war, because they was trying to get us to go, you know. They said if you were out patrolling, you know, if you were on a patrol and you came across some bandits, you had to, if you came across a camp, say a bandit camp, you had to say charge and go straight in, like, you know. Oh my God. What we used to do, we had informants. I never liked them because I thought they could inform against us, really, you know. But they used to say there was a camp, bandit camp somewhere, and we used to go out and put a circle around it and wait for them to come back to it. And I was asleep one day. It was so hot, you know, in the summer. I was asleep midday. All of a sudden, I heard these guns are opening up, and there's a woman and a man who'd come into the camp. And they shot the woman dead, and the bloke ran off. The officers, and they had M2s, they're American M2s. They're pretty useless, you know, like pea shooters they were. You see them on the old war. All the officers, most of the men have got M2s. And they were an automatic weapon, gas return to, you know, to reload it. And I said, they were equivalent to our .22, which is quite a small bullet, you know. But anyway, they killed this woman, and the bloke ran off, and they found him a couple of days later dead, you know. But me and another bloke, we had to carry this woman out of the jungle. They said to us, we'd take a photograph of her, or them, him, and bury him. But no, we had to carry him right back to the bloody camp, didn't we? And this National Service officer, we were leaving the camp like that day, because obviously that was it, we finished. And he pissed off, didn't he? You know, run. And me and this bloke were left carrying this woman, and we had no weapons, because we couldn't carry weapons. We had her slung between a pole in a canvas bag. God, bloody hell. I thought, if the communists find it now, we've got a dead woman and no weapons. But we were coming back from the camp, you know, because we used to have our own camp in the jungle. We were coming back from a bandit one day, and the bloke behind me got lost. He was dragging his heels, like, you know. And all of a sudden, I heard this, he had a Bren gun, and all of a sudden, I heard it open up. I thought, Christ, what's he shooting at, you know? And all of a sudden, there's a rustling in the hedge, and this wild boar came charging through and went past me, you know, because I was ready, because I didn't know who was coming, like, you know. Yeah, it was a boar, yeah. And he came up eventually. I said, what was you bloody shooting at? And he said, well, there's something in the jungle, like, you know. I said, it was a boar, not a communist, you know. Oh, dear. But if it had been facing me, he could have shot me, couldn't he? One bloke, he was walking behind me, and he didn't have his safety catch on, and he caught the bit on the side that you pull back to load it. He caught it on a vine, pulled it back. It didn't go back far enough to latch, and it fired. And it went down, right down my right foot. I thought, bloody hell. I said, put your safety catch on, for Christ's sake. Jesus. But the planes come over and dropped supplies by parachute. And we had to let off smoke bombs, you know, so that they could see it. But the little square we built, you know, was like, from up there, it must have been like a postage stamp. But anyway, we managed to get most of our stuff. Because we only went out with about 7 days' food when we left camp. If we were going to stay out longer, then we had to have an airdrop. Trish and her family moved back to Barnet while I was in the army. And when I came out, I decided to move up there prior to us getting married. She was very upset because I didn't meet her that same day I got back. I said I'll meet her the next day, and that upset her. That did. She felt I should have gone straight to her, you know. But that was me. I was funny in those days.
What do you mean?
Well, you know, strange person, you know. That's all I can put it, really. Because I came out of the army in 55 and we got married in 1958 on March the 1st. We used to do that before April, and you got all your tax back for the year when you got married. Yeah, so you got a little bit of a few pennies. My mum had taken out insurance with the Pearl Insurance Company, and of course you had to have your right name on it. So my right name was Warmingham. And that was the old family name. That was Mum's old family name. So we had to blooming change that. I had to go to a judge and swear who I was and all this to change his name before we got married. Because I didn't know anything about all that, you know, obviously. When I went up to Barnet, I got a job at Brentford, which is like West London. And I used to go there on my motorbike from Barnet round to Brentford. And I worked in the box there. I got fed up with going round on the motorbike because you imagine going round the North Circular on a motorbike. Oh, nightmare. Even in those days. What it must be like now, I don't know. But I got this job at a place called Marshmore, and it was a box between Potter's Bar and Hatfield on the big northern line, northeastern line, and that's where all those lovely Pacific engines used to run through. The A4s, as they called them, and Mullards, of course, the one that got the speed limit. That was the A4. I loved their whistle. They had a lovely whistle. Steamboat one, you know? Yeah. Yeah, it's great. I wish I'd taken more pictures. I've got some pictures from that signal box. Signal boxes were being shut down, which I was a signalman. And so I opted to go on the underground in 1962. And I became a guard, conductor, they call them. And you operate the doors and that in the stations. And then eventually you can go up driving. You have to go through a course, you know. And then you can, I was driving, I think, for about 9 years. Yeah, I quite liked it, actually. You're in the dark, of course, most of the time. I mean, Barnet's out in the open. Barnet to East Finchley was originally old British Rail lines. And all the stations were British Rail, you know. And then, of course, from East Finchley, you go down the tunnel to Highgate. In the tunnel, funny enough, because of the air pressure that you're pushing in front of you, it only does about 30 miles an hour. In the right-hand window, there's a flag you could put up. It was striped yellow and black, and that give you extra power, which we weren't supposed to use. But I could reach it, you know, with the controller open, I could reach over and flip it up and then put it back down again, and you've energised that extra power. And it would do about 40, 45 miles an hour then. The stuff I was driving was 1938 stock. And they're all on the Isle of Wight now. They're still running around on the Isle of Wight. Before I left there, because then that's when I moved down here. And obviously you couldn't work on the underground down here sort of thing. Too much travelling and that, you know. But obviously I had 3 girls. Sue was first one, yeah. She was born in 59. Jan was the second one. Jan was born in Hill Rise in Potter's Bar in an old...
Hello, good morning, Rupert. Just checking everything's okay.
Yes, I'm okay, thank you, darling.
All right, lovely. You have a good day today. Take care.
Yes, thank you, bye.
All right, bye.
That's my early morning call. They always call you to see if you're still alive.
That's clever.
Yeah. Debbie was born in Wood Street. That was a maternity hospital. We always have a laugh about Debbie because we had her to get the points on our council list for a house, and we had to have plenty of points. So we had Debbie. There's always been a joke, you know. that she was born because we wanted points on the council list, you know. We got a council house eventually, and our friend Brenda, who lived in Barnet, a great friend of ours, she was so helpful at times, and we said, oh, we got a house in Ridgeview Close, down in Barnet, because she knew it as a very rough road. She said they put all the people there that were a bit rough, you know. But we never found any problems down there. It's still there. We went down there once, you know. Our house is still there. I think it was 21, I think our house was. Sue and used to play out the back. There was a field out the back and there was a little stream down there. They used to go out there playing at the end of our garden. It's amazing how these places still survive, isn't it? The houses themselves, you know. We couldn't buy a house in London because we didn't have enough money. In those days, they wouldn't let you buy a house if you didn't have enough money. So we couldn't buy one. So we bought one down here in Broadstairs, Rumfields Road, which is a brand new wimpy house. When we bought it, it was a pin on the wall. We didn't have a house there. And it was it £1,995, I think it was, in those days. I think it was the end of January, funny enough. It was freezing cold. And we had the 2 cats at the time. We had one in the box, and she scratched her way out and got under my front seat. I had a Ford Consul, and it was a bench seat. And she went underneath the seat and stayed there all the way down the Broadstairs. And of course, when we got to the house, the furniture hadn't arrived. We had to wait for that, and it was late in the afternoon. And no cooker, but in those days, the gas company had to come in and fix the cooker. You know, you weren't allowed to do anything like that. And they'd already been, so they wouldn't come again that day. So we had no cooker. Oh, nightmare. But anyway, eventually we got settled in, you know. The girls went to local schools. I got a transfer off of London Transport down to Broadstairs on the railway at Ramsgate Station. And it was freezing up there. That station's really cold, you know. It's high up. Oh, because me being on the underground, it's lovely and warm down there, isn't it? 2000 would be my birthday in January, on the 10th. And I thought to myself, I don't want to be on the railway over Christmas, but all them people up in London being sick on the trains and all that. So I finished up before Christmas. I thought, blow that, I don't want no more of that. The office workers are terrible. They drink too much and then they're sick, you know. My stepfather was very good with animals. They went to Southampton Common. There was a zoological garden there. It was all done with Chipperfield. They set up this zoological garden with animals in it. In the middle, they had a sea lion pond. And he used to do all the flowers. And they were lovely. He used to do spring. It was tulips and daffodils. And people used to come up and see the gardens more than the animals. You know, they used to love the gardens. He was very good. And you could go in with animals. There was 2 black panthers. And he used to go in with them and get one of them to sit on his lap. He used to do this Sunday. He was a bit of a showman, you know. And these bloody animals used to sit on his lap. These black panthers. Jesus. And then, of course, in those days, Chipperfields, they could bring animals from abroad. Not that they can't do that now, but they used to bring them, and then they were wild. They had to be tamed, you know. And I forget, I think they brought some leopards back or something, and they were bloody vicious, you know. They were wild animals, you know. They put them in these cages, and it was during the winter, so he had to look after them, like, you know. Gee. They had a hippo there, and an elephant, and a monkey, ex-circus monkey, Charlie's name was. And they're dangerous monkeys when they get older, yeah. He got out one day, went down the road and smashed all the toilets up. Cool. I don't know how they got on the common, because people are very touchy about the common. The common ground is where, in the old days, you could feed your animals on it. You know, if you had sheep or whatever, you could go on the common. And everybody was very touchy about anything that happened with the common. But how they got to go there, I don't know. I think it's still there. It was an enclosed place. There was hedges all round, and you could walk round it in 5 minutes if you just walked round. But they had all sorts of animals there. And a couple of sheds with snakes and all that in as well. And outside little pens with rabbits in and that, which all the girls, children liked. My poor old mum, she was living in the caravan again, at the back, because she was still working there when we left, you know. And I remember her phoning me up and saying the stepfather had passed away. Of course, I had to go up, you know, for the funeral and all that. And my mum got cancer in the end. She was in this hospital near Portsmouth, because it was difficult with me, because I was working, and I used to have to go down and see her, you know, bless her, and just go in for an hour. At one time I was early turn, and it was quite a good turn. I finished early, and I went off down there from London. You know, I finished up in London, and I went off down to see her on the train in my uniform and that. Yeah, she had a lot of rough times, she did. I was out with the dog one morning, and the phone went, and Trish answered it. He said to her, oh, I think I might be your husband's brother. And of course, she didn't know what the hell was going on, you know. And in the meantime, I came back, and I took the phone, and I said, who's this? And he said, oh, my name's Rupert Dennison. He said, I think I'm your brother, you know. And I said, oh, blimey, I don't think about that. I don't know how they found me. He lives in Bromsgrove, just south of Birmingham. He's a nice chap. He was a teacher, funny enough, in maths. His wife, her name's Trish as well, funny enough. Anyway, we met up eventually, you know. And then, of course, we got involved with Annie. She was my dad's offspring. And God, got a bit complicated, you know. But I still talk to her now, you know. She lives in New York. And Anthony is a son. And I think his mum was another. I didn't have both the same mums. I didn't even know about my dad, you know. I didn't know about him at all. His name was Dennison, Rupert Dennison. My dad was well up in the music industry. He was in the army, but he was a bandmaster, very high up, you know. And there's a place called Keller Hall in London, which is where they teach all the musicians. And he was there in Keller Hall. And then in the army, he got a job in Trinidad as a bandmaster of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Band. And he went out there in the April, funny enough, after I was born in January. He went out there in the April. Why Mum didn't go with him, we don't know. I suspect if she'd have said to her dad, I'm going with this bloke to Trinidad, he would have said, oh no, you were not, you know. We don't know. We got a photograph of them standing in the garden with a drink. Don't know where, but they're both standing together. That's all we know. I mean, obviously, to have me, they must have got together. But obviously, he got this job, and he just went, you know, to Trinidad. He came back now and again. I've got a picture of him conducting the band, and Princess Margaret's walking past. She's obviously going to go inspect the troops or something, you know, because Trinidad was one of our colonies in those days, you know. And I think when it changed, that's when he finished up. He couldn't carry on the job, but they didn't want him, you know, obviously being English. There's a lovely bandstand in the government house grounds in Trinidad, and he used to do a show each Sunday night for the locals. And during the war, apparently, he was playing a German song, and nobody realised, you know. He could have got in terrible trouble if the head of the regiment found out. He'd have been in real trouble. And I don't know which order it was in, but he got married twice. And one girl died of cancer and the other drowned. And I think it was Maracas Bay it was called. I don't know why, because apparently she was a very good swimmer. It's a lovely bay, Horseshoe Bay, up on the north coast of Trinidad. We went there, and there was a lady there selling fish and chips. And I said, what's the fish? And she said, it's shark. Yeah, it was very nice, you know. Yeah. But while I was in the water, there was a whirlwind coming along the beach. It was lifting all the umbrellas up and throwing them all around. And Trish and Anthony were sitting there on the beach, you know. And he was telling her about, you know, my dad, because she was panicking because I'm out in the water and I'm not a good swimmer. I'll just do the breaststroke, you know. And she was saying, come back, you know, come back. Because it was Annie, really, my sister. She said, you ought to change your name, you know, to your dad's name, you know. I wish I could talk to Mum now, you know. I could ask her lots of questions, you know, about her life.